Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inner Talks. I'm your host, Jackie Zavala, and today we have a very special guest that I'm very honored to introduce to you. Her name is Dr. Carina Fiedeldey-Van Dijk, and she is such a wonderful human in a lot of ways. And I want to briefly introduce a little bit of all her experience. She is the co-founder of Into Performance and the president of EPSY Consultancy, where she helps organizations create thriving workplaces, develops powerful leaders, and she builds sustainable success through doing this. Carina is a natural innovator who blends her creativity, analytics, and strategy in everything she does, whether that's coaching senior executives, leading transformative research, or designing psychometric tools that change the game. She also co-developed the Baron Multifactor Measure of Performance, in which she created the equality framework for workplace equity. And she has built impactful tools in emotional intelligence, leadership development, and organizational climate. With a PhD in psychology, Dr. Carina has a deep expertise in research methodology, social psychology, and cross-cultural studies. Dr. Fiedeldey-Van Dijk brings both scientific rigor and human insight to her work, putting her heart and the warmth that sometimes these assessments require. Carina, I'm very excited to have you on the podcast today, and welcome.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you very much for that gracious introduction. I'm always intrigued by what people pick to introduce other people with, because it says a lot about what resonates with you and where the relationship between us is positioned as well. And congratulations on pronouncing my last name. I must say, sometimes I think I'm still practicing myself. It's not an easy last name to pronounce in English, so it's Fiedeldey-Van Dijk. But I go by Carina, so that's all fine. Yeah.
So again, thank you. And I would love to open this conversation with you, Carina, by diving into all this beauty of emotional intelligence, which I know has been part of your passion and your work. And to start that, I would like to ask you, what originally sparked your passion in understanding emotional intelligence and the human potential that nowadays continues to inspire all your work and all of the things that I know you're doing?
Yeah. That's a good question, and it probably takes me back to when I was a young adult still and studying in two different fields or disciplines, if you like. So on the one hand, I studied psychology, and that really fed my passion into being interested in people and what make people perform well and be well in their lives, both in their personal lives and social lives, but also in their work lives. And then there was the other side of the harder sciences, where it really fed my aptitude in numbers and my interest in mathematics and statistics. And seeing that from an early age, that those seem to be worlds apart, and yet I saw the potential and the opportunity in combining those two. So psychology really offered me an opportunity to do that, to bring in the science and the psychometrics into psychology through psychological assessments, or psychometric tests, as they are also called. So that was a natural avenue for me that I could explore further. And that journey via assessments then led me to different test publishers, and I was also introduced to the EQI once I immigrated from South Africa to Canada and joined the test publisher of the EQI. So that was where I was introduced to it, not just the model of Dr. Baron, but also other models. And since then, with my consulting work as well, I came across different emotional intelligence models and got to appreciate the value that each one can bring for different purposes as well.
Absolutely. And right now that you were mentioning all these um, differences of changing hats between coming from the background of psychology and the hard sciences and then the people, what can you tell me that has been like the favorite thing for you on like also changing countries, like moving from one place to the other? I know that and not a lot of people tend to talk of how challenging that might be in terms of adapting to new cultures, adapting to absorbing new knowledge from different pools. And I can
Yeah,
see in you a very like a blended experience of not just culture, but also knowledge. How has that been for you?
yeah. I think my early life prepared me for that in a sense, because even though I grew up in South Africa and was very much embedded in the South African culture via schools, etc., my parents were immigrants themselves from the Netherlands. So we spoke a different language. We spoke Dutch in the house, whereas I went to an Afrikaans speaking school, and English is taught in South Africa as well, along with Black languages. So already since growing up, I had multiple perspectives. I had different ways of looking at the world. And when the time came when we felt it was needed to make a decision on immigrating for the sake of giving our children the best opportunities, and then choosing a country like Canada where people are accepted more for who they are than what nationality they are or what the color of their skin is, etc. It all helps, along with me also having studied cultural psychology a little bit, so I had the cognitive background in that as well, having worked in both individualistic and collectivistic cultures that bring with them different worldviews. So it's just coming from a whole bag full of respect, I think, for differences and how people can get along. And then, of course, emotional intelligence fits in with that as well, because it cultivates how we can show respect and grow respect for each other to live together in more harmony than what we tend to see these days in the world.
And I love that you shared a little more about your background in terms of culture because I had the pleasure to visit the Netherlands just once in my life. And I have to say that the warmth of its people in a very open way, it's something that I think I brought back from that, like this openness. And I think that's very important, as you said, like the being able to change from a individualistic culture to collectivistic cultures and see how that plays out, not just in life, but I'm sure in your work. Because another thing that I would like to mention about Dr. Carina is that she's also a master coach and a sought after speaker and a very trusted partner from different organizations. And uh, with this master coach, I'm sure like the dealing with people every day is something that has been worked at or natural for you. Will you say that these were skills that you improved with experiences or you just had it since you were like I'm also curious of knowing how easy it is
Yeah,
for people to get this.
yeah. I definitely experience helps a lot, life experience, and then also learning via the experiences of others as they share those with you in coaching and in assessment as well. I don't know that I was natural from the very beginning, especially coming from a European background where facts are very much valued, and in the hard sciences too, facts trump anything else. or proof trumps anything else. So I think it's a skill set that I also had to learn how to do this better. And in a sense, I think I'm an eminent student. I will never stop learning. Every conversation I have with someone is a new learning experience for me. So you can only prepare so much with people, and then it requires openness and flexibility, adaptability, ingenuity in order to pick up on what is it that they are really saying and sharing with you. And how do you facilitate that conversation so that there's growth opportunities for that individual or the group as well?
That's very very important to hear and to share, because that's very true. When we sit in front of someone, is what are we there for? Are we really there to listen and to get a new perspective of life, or are we just there to spend some time, right? And that's, I would like to share something before we go to the other question. But I had an episode like a couple of months ago with one of my guests. He's a multi-instrumentalist, and he's very much like a people person. And he was saying that because he couldn't travel that much yet in his life, he has decided that he explores people by conversations. So every time he meets somebody, he is really trying to like swim in the depths of the ocean of that person. And I've never seen it like that. I always see people as people that we meet, but I never see people as an experience, if that makes sense. Like how does Carina feels, like when I'm with her,
Yeah.
where is she taking me? And right now you just took me to the Netherlands, to Canada, to all this experience that if I'm really open to listen, I'm getting in that space. And I wanted to say that because of what we're talking about right now. And it's true, it's like the power of storytelling. And thank you for sharing that with
Yeah.
us. Yes.
Yeah, it's traveling to each other's spaces, but then also being willing to meet each other in their spaces. So it's not just a matter of traveling to get there, but then what do you do once you get there in order to enjoy time together? Because that is an enriching experience in itself.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And talking now about like the people experience and this emotional intelligence aspect that we were also mentioning, I wanted to ask you, Dr. Karina, like how can emotional intelligence, which I know this is a factor that you and Dr. Baron have like really get in depth into the models that you've co-created, how can this piece, EQ, help someone navigate new or high pressure environments or even life situations? Um, this question is related to also those that can't fully understand the concept yet. I will also like appreciate if you can give a glimpse of what emotional intelligence entails, like in the aspect that we'll be talking about it today. And,
Yeah.
and yes, that's my first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think one has to recognize that there are different models in emotional intelligence. So I will let Dr. Baran speak to his model of emotional intelligence, which is a well-being model by himself, because it's who better to hear it from than the person who developed this. But what I will attempt to do is perhaps give you the universality in all the models together. So if you look at different models of emotional intelligence, I would say that four parts stand out. The first part is recognition. And the second part is understandings. The third part is management. And then the fourth part is effective use of, of those emotions. So the four parts that I mentioned, recognition, so that's the R. The U is understanding of your emotion. The M stands for management, and the E stands for effective use. So it spells room. So in a sense, that's the room So even though it's spelled differently, or the space in which you are with yourself and also with other people. So if you want to simplify that, I would say emotional intelligence is being smart with feelings. And how you are smart with those feelings are through these four components. So when you then ask about how do you navigate through crises or significant events or things that really impact you in your life and shape the rest of your life, I would tend to go back to these four components, the room that I've mentioned. So if you take the first one, which is about recognition, I think when you're in a crisis or when you feel that pressure or the stress or you feel a little bit burnt out maybe, try to name the feeling. Try to figure out what is it that it's doing to you. How would you describe that impact with a feeling word, not an I think, but I feel? Because the feeling gets to what's the real impact on you more so than what you think about it. So that is the first tip or a strategy that I have for when people deal with it. In terms of understanding, I would recommend that people try and figure out, why is this so important to them? Why is it affecting that so much? What is at stake? Who is involved? What if it was different? How would it have mattered then? So trying to just put your mind around the understanding of it, which may be a bit more of a thinking exercise or a cognitive exercise. Then the third part is, how are you going to manage this? So how do you maintain your focus? How do you stay calm in the presence of that impact or the stress or the pressure or the crisis that you are going through? And what do you know about yourself in terms of dealing this? So for one person, it could be to go for a walk. For another person, it could be to tackle a task and just complete it. For another person, it might be to break it down into smaller parts. So what it will be is different for each person. But try to find something that will work for you. So a strategy that will work for me does not necessarily work for you. So try to find out, how do you typically manage it? And most often, that's a good exercise to do when we are out of crisis or out of stress, when we allow ourselves a little bit of reflection time and say, okay, if I take a step back and I look at myself, and how would I describe myself in terms of handling stress usually? What examples can I give myself where my strategies have worked well? So that when you are in that crisis situation, that you've already done your homework and it's readily available for you to fall back onto, because it's very hard to think straight in times of crisis.
Absolutely.
And then in terms of the last one, the effective use of it, I think it's very helpful also to try and turn stress or crisis around so that it's no longer a negative in your mind, but a positive. So try to see how it's helping you, how it's charging your energy to do something about it, for example, or how it might be good to take you out of your comfort zone because there's a growth opportunity in that. So if you put a positive spin on it, already half the crisis feeling of it is won, because your mindset has shifted, and it is one of opportunity and hope that you can manage this well, and that times will be better after it. So it also cultivates resilience in a sense.
That's so true. As you were speaking, I was thinking of all the moments that I have to use this set of skills that I have developed through the years. And I try to do a lot of journaling sometimes of what did I do in this circumstance? What did I do when I had no money to pay rent? What did I do when I don't know, I had to look for the visa opportunities because my visa was ending. Like very stressful situations that you are so right. At the moment, I'm not able to think straight because at the moment, like there's a lot of heightened feelings. But this journaling process has helped me to go back and read Jackie at 19 or at 21 or at 22nd that she was able to deal with it. So sometimes the way I see myself is like, okay, if you did it at 22, come on, like there's no way you don't do it now.
Yeah.
Like it was worse back then. And this comparison helps me. But as you were talking, Dr. Karina, I thought, I'm sure through the model that you see a lot of people having different tendencies and things that help them and that don't help them. You just mentioned some might need a walk and some others might need the journaling process, for example, that I do. Uh, have you identified or seen, or what's your opinion on how do people really find what helps them for real? Like, do you think they have to have a very good self-understanding of themselves, or what is the thing that can help them get to that, okay, this is what helps? Is there a
Yeah.
tip for that?
Um, I like to encourage people to take some scenarios. So if you think about the past week, for example, to pick one scenario where you feel good about yourself, where you think, oh wow, that went well. And it doesn't have to be a huge scenario. It can be something very small, a task you completed or a conversation you had with someone. And try to answer to the five whys. So what happened? Where did it happen? When did it happen in your life so that you understand the context a little bit better? With whom did that happen? And then why did it happen? And then, of course, there's the how did it happen as well. So one H on top of the five whys. But if you answer those questions, it will help you to really reflect on that scenario and understand what lies behind it. What is helping you or contributing to you feeling that this was a successful scenario? And then do the same exercise with one where you feel it wasn't really good. Even if someone else might say, oh no, that was good, but you feel within yourself, this is not up to my standard, or this is not the way I wanted this to go, or I think it could have gone a little bit better. Something that you know is not all there yet. Take that scenario as well and break it down by answering to the five W's and the H questions. If you do that, you will start noticing patterns. So you will start noticing, usually if I'm in the company of these people, I feel more successful. And if I'm in the company of these people or these situations, I'm struggling. And then that gives you the pointers to say, okay, why is that? What's the impact of those people or those particular situations that make me struggle? Is it a matter of self-confidence? Is it a matter of, inspiration, that you feel more inspired in certain situations than others? So it will help you break it down and see, what are the patterns, or what's the habits, what's the fear that keeps getting popping up time and time again, so that you can name it and that you can then find your strategies for how you manage it and be more effective in the future.
This is this is gold. It's very, very important because I think sometimes I'm speaking as someone that uh, lives life very fast. Like I like doing things like like quickly, and sometimes I don't stop and really okay, what strategies did I really use through this process. And I think you are so right, labeling helps as well. And this leads me to thinking about the mix between soft skills, as you were saying earlier, and hard sciences. Is, I think, the science aspect of life brings us to label things, identify the situation, and ABC, and get to a result. And sometimes the other piece of the equation leads us to feeling. Earlier, you said something very beautiful, and I would like to go a little back to that. You said that emotional intelligence can be seen as how we feel in a more intelligent way, if that makes sense, like feeling in
Yeah,
an
being smart with feelings.
be smart with feelings, exactly. And this is so crucial, Dr. Carina, because I'm involved with a lot of people that sometimes think feelings are dumb. I'm gonna use the word, right? Feel, nobody
Mhm.
needs feelings. You shouldn't feel. Don't be feeling all the time. And I would like to change this perspective, because I do think feeling, as you were saying earlier, gives us the truth of what lies within us. And if we can't fully connect with the feeling and we're always in our heads, how do we really know we're being honest with ourselves?
Yeah.
There might be a disconnect. What's your I know you already told us the thought behind this, but what would you say to people that struggle feeling and thinking? Because the minute they think that thinking is smart and it's culturally accepted, but feeling
Yeah.
is eh, weak, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it happens more often than what we would like to hear, and especially with older generations who grew up with that mindset, or people working in the more harder sciences where thinking is highly valued. What I would say to them is really going back to psychology in the 60s, where we identified basically three circles that work like a Venn diagram. So they overlap slightly with the three circles. And in one circle sits the thinking, the cognition. In another circle sits the feeling or the emotions. And then in a third circle sits the will, the attitude. So I would say all three are important because all three are dimensions of a whole person. So it's okay if you just want to think, but recognize that you are not fully using everything you have available to you. You're only using a third of what's you, what humans are made of. So you're really narrowing the scope. And now that thinking dimension, one of the three thirds, has to work so hard in order to do the work of the other dimensions as well. So why not combine them? And yes, sometimes we need to think a little bit more. In other words, be in the one circle with a little bit more emphasis than the feeling. Sometimes we need to feel a little bit more, or sometimes we really need to work on the will part, the attitude part. So the thinking and the feeling might be there and on board, but if the will is not there, or if the attitude is not right, then you're not moving ahead with that project or with that person either. So it's the cognition, the emotion, and then the conation, as that third will or attitude part is called. And they all work in tandem with each other, and just, rounding out the person as a whole.
Wonderful. That's so right. And I love that you're putting it in very simple language, to the point that somebody can understand, okay, there's more to my to me evolving into a complete or a whole person, and if I leave these pieces outside, it might be hard for me to get that full experience. And Dr. Carina, I would like to ask you, in all your years of experience through therapy and people and coaching and all the things you've been through, what would you say, or what have you seen that keep people motivated, emotionally resilient, and engaged in long-term situations or commitments even?
Yeah. I would say, in order to stay, so when you ask about motivation, and I just think about the performance model of that Dr. Baron has developed as well, there are 5 parts to the whole person in his model. So the one is the inspirational part. So your question lies squarely within that part. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you engaged? There's also a personal part to it, a social part to it, a cognitive part to it, and a physical part to it. So if you only pay attention to, I need to be motivated because I need to be motivated, you keep yourself in that inspirational part. And yes, it can take you a long way. So you can really work on persevering, on staying engaged, being motivated, bringing that energy and the enthusiasm that you have, and then being really focused on what's the meaning of what you are doing, so that it makes sense, that it stays purposeful. But that by itself, I would say, is not enough. You also need to be paying attention to your relational aspects in life, how you connect with people, how do you empathize with people, how do you protect them. You also need to be thinking about the cognitive aspects. How do you usually problem solve? How do you remain adaptable and resourceful? And then also the physical self. How do you make sure that you stay physically well and have tolerance for handling any discomforts that may come your way and make life a bit more unpredictable than you might like. So all those things together, I think, need to work hand in hand, in balance with each other, so that you have, I'm thinking about all these parts as things that I have in my toolbox.
Mhm.
And so if your toolbox is shaped in a very narrow fashion, that some things lie very deeply or deep inside that toolbox, and the motivational parts lie right at the top, and you, every time you put your hand in the toolbox and you pick what's at the top, you're going to overuse those and underuse what lies underneath. So you need to use a toolbox where everything is available to you, so that you can take the pieces that you need for every particular situation and be more versatile, because in doing that, you are way more prepared and ready for any situation that might come your way, any crisis that might hit you, than when you're always doing the same thing and you're just focused on one thing at a time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Actually, as you were answering this question, I would like to also share with the audience that I was able to take the assessment myself, um, the assessment that Dr. Karina is mentioning right now, and you were talking about these motivational factors and how those can be measured and understood, and I thought of some of my results. And part of the results that I got is that I have a high level of self-understanding of myself, and that I was very good in the social awareness, right? And part of this, and this is the reason I'm mentioning it, I do believe I know myself pretty well. Like I have put this time to get to that point. However, when it comes to being this taking the level of discomfort in situations and being able to go through those processes, those were very low. So I was like, wow, how are those two combined? Like somebody that really knows what she wants, but lacks the courage and the lack of discomfort sometimes to go to get that because of whatever reasons might be involved. And I had this interpretation from when they read my results, and these leave me thinking, right, on, okay, wow, sometimes we can be very high in certain parts of ourselves, but there's others that if they are lacking, you will not have the full picture. And I don't know if that was the way to interpret it, but I took it as, okay, I need to have more courage now to speak my mind and now to be able to express what's inside so that I can continue with all that inspirations and motivations that I already know I have, but I'm
Yeah,
not going completely for them.
yeah. So I have not seen your profile myself because you got the debriefing from another accredited specialist. But I will say, with the assessment that you did, which is called the MMP, the Multifactor Measure of Performance, where it measures 18 different scales, and you highlighted three of them, the discomfort tolerance, and then courage and social awareness, and there's self-understanding as well, so actually four. I would say that because the MMP measures current behavior, obviously your results are situated in what was going on in your life at the time. And that can change when situations change as well. So for you having high social awareness, it means that that radar, so we have two radars built into our being, and the one is to be very in tune with ourselves, what is going on with us, doing self-reflection, etc. The other radar is to be in tune with others. So knowing what's being said at the water cooler or what's going on, and that radar helps us to prepare because we see storms brewing from far away, and it gives us time to prepare so that by the time that storm hits us, we know what to do.
Yeah.
So ideally, you want both radars high at work and a balance between them as well. So if the balance is off, let's say you have high social awareness but low self-understanding, we would like to, in a debriefing or coaching, work with you to realign that balance a little bit.
Yes.
In terms of discomfort tolerance, usually when a person is in a critical situation of their lives, predictability is key. So if your tolerance for discomfort is low, oftentimes it's because you value at that given time your predictability. You value that certainty in the face of other uncertainties around you. So a low score is not necessarily a negative, as what it is a comment to you by yourself saying, this is what's going on. I can use it as a flag. I can understand it in this way. So what comforts do I need to preserve around me? And where am I willing to let go of it and tolerate a little bit more?
Yeah.
So comforts could be you like your routines, or you need to see certain people more regularly because you get energized by them, or you have certain ways of doing things or certain standards that you need to uphold in order to navigate through a current difficult situation. So that's okay. But it could also be that you will be able to to tolerate more discomfort, working late nights and pushing yourself and not being good by yourself when everything else in the world is right. So it's a matter of how do you balance it? Ideally, we want strength in all the factors and work on that versatility that I spoke about earlier. But it's also good to see when there are imbalances to understand them in the context in which you live. So there's no judgment here. It's a conversation that you have with yourself. It's a little bit of special me time that you're giving yourself that we get so little of when life is go, go, go. You need to rush to the next thing. It's a 20-minute exercise that you can do where you get all this feedback, and it can just set the world right for a while so that you understand even better where are you at the moment, what do you need to watch out for, how can you build on your strengths in order to perform better.
Yes. And you're so right, Dr. Carina, when you mentioned the piece of balance, it gets me thinking to I have done a lot of assessments in my life, like different ones. I'm a passionate of human development, so I'm always looking for things out there. But one thing that I have to mention about the MMP is that this is the first assessment that I've ever taken in which I don't feel that there's a right or wrong result. There's typically a lot of, okay, this is my score, and you almost feel proud of sharing your score with your friends. Like, oh, I
Yeah,
get really high. Like, that means I'm very emotionally intelligent. Uh,
yeah,
but this is not that way. This is okay. You have the scores, and then you go either like if you're going very high or very low, we have to meet in the middle. We have to meet in a balance. And this I truly love because I'm a big advocate of balance, and there's no wrong or right, cold or hot. Like, this means how do we survive in both meeting, as you said earlier as well.
yeah.
So would you share like part of your wisdom in why balance is so crucial? Like, why not going to high scores or low scores? Why the balance?
Yeah. I think it feels perhaps a little bit counterintuitive, and that really comes from the the Western worldview, where we say the higher the score, the better. Just think of your own schooling. When we go to school and the teacher asks you to do a test, and there were 20 questions, and your results come back, and you had 18 out of 20. Instead of feeling good about 18 out of 20, what do we typically do? Which two did I have wrong? And you focus on the two that you have wrong. The same with the profile. When people look at their profile, your eyes are drawn towards the left side where you have the lowest scores. And then you zoom in on those scores and you feel momentarily bad about them, because what does it say about you? Because you want to portray a positive picture of yourself. So it's so ingrained in us to say the higher the score, the better. And that's what we chase. That whether you're in primary school or secondary school, or even in a tertiary environment, it's all about that. If you don't get above a certain score, you won't get your scholarship, or you won't get accepted into a program. So it has certain benefits. I think it helps you to reach high, to always do your best. But life is not just about that. So in a cognitive sense or a thinking sense, yes, that would be the goal. But in terms of humans and how humans operate, I would say somewhat high is good, but balance is better, because that balance makes you just a little bit more adaptable, more resilient in the face of setbacks. It will help you understand what do you need for certain situations? Because the same solution does not fit all cases, will not solve every problem. You need to be able to read problems in order to figure out what's the best solution for that particular problem. And that's why we focus on balance as well. And coincidentally, that sits a little bit better within a collectivistic worldview as well, which is all about balance and the whole person and holism. And I think to combine the two is perhaps the best position that you can be in. So I want to bring this back to emotional intelligence as well, because the concept of emotional intelligence was born and made popular by comparing it with IQ. So EQ versus IQ. And everybody knew what IQ was about because that's being tested early on in pupils' lives. And IQ is what you need in order to succeed in life. So it has a high predictive property to it as well. And to balance that out, because IQ is associated with thinking, now here the new scientists came and they said, oh, well, we have EQ too, and maybe EQ predicts more or at least contributes to success as well. And that's why it was called emotional intelligence instead of cognitive intelligence.
Mm.
So it fit in the time in which it was born. But really, it's not so much about intelligence, in my personal view, than what it is about competence. So when we assess people, we don't really measure the outcome in the sense of its intelligence or its competence. We measure attributes or contributors to that concept. And how you put all those together, that then spells intelligence or competence. So having high scores by themselves would not necessarily say that you will be successful in every situation. It's how you put them together. And how we put them together, our best bet for success lies then in balance. So getting that right combination in the right balance, that spells success. And that's why with the MMP, we focus on strength, yes, but we also pay close attention to balance between all these components.
Yes. And I'm not gonna deny that when I saw some high results, the inner student in me that wants the A plus, I was like, yay, this means this is an A plus. But then it took me time to understand that, wait a second, this is not what we're really looking for. We're really looking for your adaptability to blend both. Like, it's beautiful that I have some gifts, but how are my gifts playing out in the context of also being able to do the opposite of the same like the same measure. And I think that's very important because, as you said, like when I saw that I had a very high level of social awareness and very good with people, and then I find out that I have problems being assertive, that's the because I'm very careful with people to the point that I'm not honoring my own needs or my own voice. So that can also be a problem. So when I find the what you're saying right now, like, okay, if you're in the middle, you can be more adaptable because you understand. I see it as you understand both worlds. This is great, and I hope that who are listening to us and watching us are able to take this assessment. We'll leave the information, and we'll have another episode as well with Dr. Baron, who is the pioneer of the model as well, and he can dive us more in detail of how this was born. But I truly appreciate Dr. Carina, like all the insight, and I would really like to continue this space and leave it open for us to continue these conversations. This is a space to to talk openly, to dive into these inner talks that sometimes I used to have by myself. And then the minute I find out that there's this beauty out there that I can just keep bringing knowledge to this podcast, it's an honor for me to have you. And we have a tradition in the podcast, which consists of answering the question of our last guest and you leaving a surprise question for our next guest. So I think you know who the next guest will be, so that will be fun. But my last guest, her name is Mariana. She's an author. She went actually to the Middle East and she was like writing her songs. So she's someone that is very in tune with also the beauty of life and all these motivations in her life. And she left this question that I found very beautiful. So this is for you. And the question that she left was, is there somebody in your life right now that you look up to, and who that person is and why?
I would say interesting question because I can pick so many people, but I would say I would choose my children. I have two children, a daughter and a son, and they're young adults themselves. I look up to them because I see opportunity and I see hope. And I know as their parent what their upbringing was and how much they have going for them. And now I get to observe, what do they do with that? How do they take their talents and what the gifts that they have and what they do with it, and all the opportunity that still lies ahead for them. I find that very inspiring because I know they have this beautiful opportunity that they can do in any way they want. And I find a lot of encouragement in that wow, I had a little hand in it, but now it's over to them. They can do with it whatever they please. And to see how they embrace that, to see, yes, they also have setbacks and they also have bad feelings and self-doubts and, all the things that we all have and go through, but how they navigate through that and what they pull from. To me, it's just beautiful to see that unfolding. And obviously from there, not just in my kids, but people in general, we have so much going for us. And to see how people make the most of it, I think is just a very, very enjoyable way to spend our time, for sure.
Absolutely. No, that's beautiful. You're so right. I think children are inspiring, especially because we know that what we are living and planning on them, like all those seeds, it's beautiful to just think what that tree is gonna look like. You never know.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for that
Yeah.
answer, Dr. Carina. And what the question would you leave for our next guest?
Yeah, for your next guest, I would like to combine what we talked about in terms of the holistic person, and that we are made up of feelings and thoughts and conation, so the will and the attitude. I would like to ask that person, what make some people perform better than others? And with that, I don't mean high scores, but I mean overall, in an overall sense.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I can wait to ask that question. And again, Dr. Carina, it was my pleasure to have you here at Inner Talks, and I hope that this is not a last conversation here and that we can continue this in the near future. And before I close and I say goodbye to our audience, if you want to leave like a final tip on people that are right now struggling with any emotional like disturb or something, if you can offer an advice from your experience, I would love to close with that. And again, thank you.
Yeah. Um, I would I would like to probably do this in two ways. The one is to encourage people to and especially when times are hard, to celebrate their journey, celebrate the process and their progress rather than perfection. Don't worry about it if things are not perfect or going exactly in the same way they want, but just enjoy, be in the moment and enjoy where you're at right now. Celebrate the little moments to give yourself that little boost to continue. And then the second part is I would love to help with that by inviting our guests to take the MMP like you've done, not to get their full results, but to get a free report where they can get their top 4 strengths, so their highest scores, as a little bit of a boost, as an intro to say, this is what I'm good at. Let's celebrate that. So it gives you 4 of those. You can do it for free by going to the mmp2perform.com website. And then you can do a free assessment from there. And then just after you've completed it, wait for it, and you can get your free report that explains to you or describes to you your top 4 strengths for performance. So if you feel like doing that, you can try it out. And of course, if you want more, you can also obtain the full report later on. But for here, the gift is the free report where you get your top 4 scores
Thank
or
you.
4 factors, performance factors.
Wonderful. Yes, I'll make sure to leave the links to the website that they can go to get their report. And as Dr. Carina just explained, I highly recommend it. It's very in detail of just a minute with yourself, like, well, 20 minutes with yourself that you're able to be very honest about where you feel right now in life. So once again, Dr. Carina, thank you. And thank you to my listeners and viewers. We'll see you very soon in another episode of Inner Talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie. It was a pleasure conversing with you today.
Thank you.